I've spent the last 6 months trying to convince myself that what I witnessed during the 3 weeks I worked the night shift at Meridian Security was some kind of collective hallucination, a shared delusion born from sleep deprivation and the strange psychology that develops between people who work in the dark while the rest of the world sleeps. But delusions don't leave evidence. Delusions don't result in missing persons reports. And delusions don't end with someone disappearing while surrounded by 23 different surveillance cameras. My name is David Chin, and I worked as a security guard at Meridian Security Solutions from October 12th until November 2nd of last year. It was supposed to be a temporary gig, 3 weeks of overnight shifts while the regular night guard took medical leave for knee surgery. The pay was decent, the work seemed straightforward, and I needed the money. I had just moved to the city and was drowning in startup costs. At the time, 3 weeks seemed like nothing. In reality, those 21 days would show me something about the nature of reality and human nature that I've spent every day since trying to unknow. Meridian Security Solutions is a 4-story building located in the industrial district of Portland. The company provides security services to businesses throughout the Pacific Northwest. Cameras, alarm systems, monitoring services, that kind of thing. The facility houses their main operations center, their equipment storage, and their server infrastructure. It's the kind of place that has more cameras pointed at more places than most people would find comfortable, a building that watches itself with paranoid intensity. When I started, I was given a brief tour by my supervisor, a woman named Patricia who worked days and seemed perpetually exhausted, as if she'd already seen everything the world had to offer and had been disappointed by most of it. The night shift is simple, she told me, walking me through the ground floor. You monitor the building, do a walkthrough every 2 hours, check the doors and windows, make sure nothing's been tampered with. You'll have access to the security system interface, where you can pull up any of the camera feeds. Most nights you'll just be sitting in the security office watching monitors. What about the cameras on the upper floors? I asked. We were standing in the lobby, and I could see the dark glass of the camera domes mounted in the corners. All monitored, Patricia said. You'll see them all on the dashboard. There are 23 cameras total in the building. All high definition, all recording 24/7. That seems like a lot, I said. It's a security company, Patricia said, as if that explained everything. Now, I need to tell you something important. There's a section of the building that's off limits to you. The 4th floor, the east wing. You don't go up there under any circumstances. Not for walkthroughs, not for anything. If an alarm goes off in that section, you call the police and you stay in the security office. You don't investigate. I must have looked confused because Patricia continued. It's currently being leased to a private research firm. They have their own security arrangements, their own cameras, their own everything. It's not our concern. The access card they gave us won't work on that floor anyway, so the point is moot. But I'm telling you this because the last guard we had, not the one on medical leave but the one before him, he went up to that floor. He said he heard something. An alarm maybe. He thought he was being helpful. What happened? I asked. Patricia's jaw tightened slightly. He quit 2 days later. Said the job wasn't for him. Wouldn't give a reason beyond that. But he looked scared when he left. Really scared. I nodded, filing this away as the kind of workplace urban legend that every job seems to accumulate, the story told to new employees to establish boundaries and reinforce the hierarchy. I had no way of knowing at the time that Patricia was being literal, that she wasn't exaggerating, and that her warning would prove to be the most valuable piece of advice anyone would give me. My first week on the night shift was exactly as mundane as Patricia had suggested it would be. I arrived at 11 p.m., checked in at the security office on the ground floor, and spent the next 8 hours sitting in front of a bank of monitors watching a mostly empty building. The office was small, just a desk with a computer system, the monitor array showing feeds from all 23 cameras, and a chair that spun in circles. There was a microwave and a mini fridge with some old coffee in a pot that I had to refresh. The building at night was profoundly quiet. The day shift employees had all left hours before. The few people who came in during the evening, cleaning crews, maintenance workers, were gone by 9 p.m. By the time my shift started, it was just me in the building and the hum of the HVAC system. Walkthroughs were simple. I'd leave the security office and make my way through the first 3 floors, checking that doors were locked, windows were intact, and nothing seemed out of place. I'd never go near the 4th floor. The elevator didn't even seem to stop there when I pressed the button, or perhaps it was programmed not to. I never bothered finding out. But cameras were everywhere on the other 3 floors. Every hallway, every office, every bathroom had at least one camera. There was something unsettling about it, the constant sense of being watched, though I knew intellectually that I was the only one doing the watching. Still, the sensation persisted, that feeling you get when you're aware of surveillance, when you know that your actions are being recorded even if no one is currently viewing them. By the end of the first week, I'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm. I'd spend my evenings reading or working on my laptop, breaking up the monotony with walks around the building and occasional conversations with the security AI that monitored the building systems during the day. There were 2 other security guards who occasionally worked the night shift. Marcus, who covered weekends, and a rotating list of part-timers who filled in on random nights. But mostly the night shift was just me. It was on the 9th day that I met Raymond. I was sitting in the security office around 3 a.m. when I noticed something on the monitors that hadn't been there before. One of the second-floor cameras was showing something moving in the hallway, a figure, dark and vague, moving with an odd, jerky gait. I leaned forward, squinting at the low-light footage, trying to get a better look. The figure moved toward the stairwell and vanished from that camera's view. A moment later, it appeared on another camera, this one showing the ground floor hallway near the main entrance. The figure was clearer now, and I realized it was a person. A man, tall and thin, with long dark hair that hung down past his shoulders. He was moving in that same strange way, his movements not quite synchronizing with how a normal person would walk. I stood up immediately, my hand reaching for the panic button on the desk. But then I thought better of it. This could be someone who had legitimate access to the building. Maybe it was one of the researchers from the 4th floor. Maybe it was someone I simply hadn't been introduced to. I grabbed my radio and called out, "Hello? This is security. I see you on the monitors. Please identify yourself." There was no response. The figure continued moving through the building, and I watched in real time as he made his way toward the stairs and began climbing them. I pulled up the 3rd floor camera feed and waited. He appeared on the 3rd floor hallway, moving at that same disconcerting pace. I could see his face now, and something about it made my stomach tighten. His features were asymmetrical in a way that seemed deliberate, as if someone had intentionally constructed his face to be slightly off, slightly wrong. His eyes were very dark, and even on the camera feed I could sense that they were fixed on something, focused with an intensity that seemed almost predatory. "Hello." I tried again on the radio. "I'm security. I need you to state your business in this building." Still no response. The figure reached the 4th floor landing and seemed to pause. I realized I couldn't see the 4th floor on my monitors. Patricia had made sure of that. The cameras on that floor were disconnected from the security office system. There was a separate monitoring station, presumably somewhere in that restricted area. I sat back down, uncertain what to do. I had no actual authority to detain anyone, and the figure hadn't done anything illegal as far as I could tell. He had access to the building, or at least he could get up the stairs. Maybe he was supposed to be here. The fact that he wasn't answering my radio calls was odd, but not necessarily threatening. I made a decision that I would regret for the rest of my life. I decided to leave the situation alone. The figure didn't reappear on my cameras for the rest of the night. When I finished my shift at 7 a.m. and reported to Patricia, I mentioned that I'd seen someone moving through the building around 3 a.m. but that they'd gone up to the 4th floor and didn't respond to radio calls. Patricia's face went pale. "What did this person look like?" she asked. "Tall, dark hair, kind of a strange way of moving," I said. I figured maybe he was one of the researchers from the 4th floor. "Did you try to intercept him?" "No," I thought. "Good," Patricia said. "Don't. If you see him again, you call me immediately. You don't approach, you don't engage, you just call me and stay in the security office until I arrive. Do you understand?" I understood that something was very wrong, but I didn't understand what. Patricia wouldn't elaborate, and when I asked directly, she just said, "It's not your problem. It's above both our pay grades. Just do what I said." I should have quit right then. I should have walked out and found another job. But I needed the money, and I was curious in that stupid way that humans are, the part of us that needs to understand things even when understanding those things might hurt us. Over the next few days I saw the figure again, or someone who looked very similar. Sometimes he'd appear on the second floor cameras, sometimes on the third floor, but never on the first floor, and always disappearing when he reached the fourth floor landing. The footage of him was always grainy, always slightly out of focus, as if the cameras couldn't quite catch him properly even when he was directly in front of the lens. On the evening of my 11th day, I finally worked up the courage to do something I should have never done. I tried to access the fourth floor camera feeds. The security office computer had a hierarchical access system. I was logged in as a night shift guard, which gave me access to most of the building's camera feeds. But the fourth floor, as I discovered when I tried to access those feeds, required a different level of authorization. I was about to give up when I noticed something. The system kept a log of who had accessed various feeds and when. Out of curiosity, I pulled up the access logs for the fourth floor and scrolled through them. The names of the people who had accessed those cameras over the past month were sparse. Patricia's name appeared multiple times. The name of someone called Dr. Reeves appeared frequently. And then there were several entries for a name I didn't recognize, Raymond. I typed the name into the security system's personnel database and got nothing. No employee records, no contractor information, no sign that anyone named Raymond had ever been authorized to work in the building. But Raymond had accessed the fourth floor camera feeds. Raymond had logged in multiple times over the past month. The most recent access had been that very day at 2:47 p.m. I should have reported this to Patricia immediately. I should have mentioned it to someone in authority. Instead, I sat in the darkness of the security office and felt a growing sense of wrongness, a creeping dread that suggested I'd stumbled upon something that wasn't meant to be found. The next night I saw Raymond again. This time he appeared on the second floor camera at exactly 3:15 a.m., precise, punctual, as if he kept a schedule. I watched him on the monitors as he moved through the hallway with those strange, jerky movements, and I noticed something new. He was looking directly at the cameras. Not just passing in front of them, but actually looking at them, his eyes tracking the lens position as he walked. He was aware of being watched. More than that, he was looking back. When he reached the stairwell and began climbing toward the fourth floor, I made another mistake. I followed him. I left the security office and made my way up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I was being stupid, I knew that even then, but some part of me needed to see if Raymond was real, if the cameras hadn't been deceiving me. I climbed the stairs to the third floor and then to the fourth, where the sealed entrance to the east wing greeted me. My access card didn't work on the fourth floor door. The lock was electronic, and when I pressed my card against the reader, nothing happened. The light on the reader remained red, access denied. But as I stood there, staring at the locked door, I heard something from the other side, the sound of footsteps moving away from the door. And underneath the footsteps, I heard something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Laughter. Not the normal laughter of a person, but something layered, something that sounded like multiple voices laughing at different frequencies simultaneously, creating a discordant, nauseating sound that vibrated in my chest. I ran back down the stairs. I called Patricia as soon as I was back in the security office. It was 4:15 in the morning, but she picked up on the second ring as if she'd been waiting for the call. "Did you see him?" she asked. "How did you know I?" "Because you're calling me at 4 a.m. and you sound terrified," Patricia said. "Tell me what you saw." I told her everything. The figure on the cameras, my access to the logs, the name Raymond, my attempt to follow him to the fourth floor, the laughter I'd heard from beyond the sealed door. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm coming in. Don't leave the security office. Don't approach the fourth floor again. Lock the office door if you can. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up before I could respond. Patricia arrived in 25 minutes, looking harried and frightened in a way I'd never seen before. She went directly to the security office computer and pulled up the fourth floor access logs, her expression growing darker as she scrolled. "God damn it," she muttered. "He's been in there more than I thought." "Who is Raymond?" I asked. "What's going on?" Patricia took a long breath and leaned back in the chair. I'm going to tell you some things, and I need you to understand that if this gets out, we could both be in serious legal trouble. There are NDAs involved, and there are people who take those agreements very seriously. Do you understand? I nodded. Meridian Security doesn't just provide security services, Patricia said. That's the legitimate side of the business, and that pays the bills. But the real money comes from the research division, which is what occupies the 4th floor east wing. The company that leases that space is called Nexus Biological Research, and they do things that don't have clear legal status. What kind of things? I asked. I don't know all the details, Patricia said. But what I do know is that they work with genetic modification, with altering human DNA. They've been working on something they call optimization, trying to create versions of humans that are faster, stronger, more intelligent. More than human, in other words. That sounds insane, I said. It is insane, Patricia agreed. But it's also real. And Raymond is one of their creations. Or one of their test subjects. I'm not entirely sure which. He was created here in one of their labs on the 4th floor. But something went wrong with him. Or maybe something went right, depending on how you look at it. What do you mean? Raymond isn't supposed to be conscious, Patricia said. The genetic modifications they were doing were supposed to create soldiers, workers, tools. Mindless, obedient, optimized for specific tasks. But Raymond developed consciousness, awareness, a sense of self. And once he became aware of himself, he became aware of his situation. He became aware that he was a thing that had been created to be used. I felt cold understanding begin to creep up my spine. Is he dangerous? I don't know, Patricia said. That's the honest answer. They don't know either. He's been in containment on the 4th floor for about a month. They tried to terminate the experiment, to kill him, but it didn't work. He survived something that should have killed him. Since then, he's been getting out of his containment, moving through the building. They've been trying to catch him and bring him back under control, but he's fast. He's smart. And he's learning how to interact with human systems. Like the camera access logs, I said. Like the camera access logs, Patricia confirmed. He's been teaching himself how to use computers, how to navigate the building systems. And because he's a construct, because he was designed by people smarter than both of us combined, he's probably very good at it. Why doesn't Nexus just lock him up better? I asked. If they know he's escaping. Because they can't, Patricia said. Or they won't. There's some kind of power struggle happening between Nexus management. Some people want Raymond contained and terminated. Other people want to study how he's developing consciousness, want to understand what went wrong in his genetic code. And then there are people I think work for government agencies, though I can't prove that, who are very interested in keeping Raymond alive and free because they're curious about what he'll do, what he'll learn, what he might become. This is insane, I said again, because it seemed like the most adequate description of the situation. Yes, Patricia said. It is. And it's why I told you not to go to the 4th floor. Because Raymond is in a strange mental state. He's experiencing consciousness for the first time, with all the confusion and rage and desperation that comes with that. He doesn't know what he is, and he doesn't know what to do with the knowledge that he was created as a slave. And he has capabilities that exceed normal human parameters. That makes him unstable and potentially very dangerous. So what am I supposed to do? I asked. Just keep working here, knowing this is happening above my head? No, Patricia said. I'm going to call Nexus management and tell them that I'm removing you from the night shift. You're done. I'll find someone else to cover the remaining days. You just need to finish out tonight and tomorrow night, and then you're out. 2 more days and you can walk away from this with a check and an NDA. I wanted to argue, wanted to say that I didn't feel comfortable with this, that it felt like a cover-up. But I also recognized that I was in no position to do anything except what Patricia was telling me to do. Raymond was real, something had gone very wrong in the labs above me, and the most sensible thing I could do was exactly what Patricia was suggesting. Finish my shifts, take the money, and forget any of this had happened. Okay, I said. 2 more days. Patricia nodded, but she looked unhappy about it. I'm going to do a walkthrough of the building and check the 4th floor access door. You stay here and monitor the cameras. If you see Raymond on any of the feeds, you call me immediately. You don't engage with him, you don't acknowledge him, you just observe and report." She left the office, and I settled into the chair in front of the monitors, my heart still racing from everything she'd told me. For the rest of that night and through the next day, I tried to act normally. I went through my shift, did my walkthroughs, and monitored the cameras. But everything had changed. The building that had seemed so mundane and safe now felt like a container holding something dangerous, something that was learning and growing and becoming increasingly aware of its own nature. I didn't see Raymond on the cameras that next night. The building seemed quiet, almost oppressively so. But I felt watched in a way I hadn't before, a sensation that went beyond being aware of the surveillance cameras. It felt like something intelligent was observing me in return, looking back at all the times I'd looked at the monitors. My second to last night came on November 1st. Patricia had worked out the transition. Another guard named Steve would take over on November 3rd, and I would be gone. I tried to treat it like any other shift, tried to focus on my book and the mundane tasks of security work. But at 2:47 a.m., exactly the time the logs had shown Raymond accessing the system, something changed. All 23 camera feeds on my monitor array went black simultaneously. For a moment I thought it was a power failure or a system error. But the monitors themselves were still lit, still displaying the interface. The feeds were just gone. All of them. Then one by one they came back on. But they were showing something different. On camera 1, the ground floor hallway, I saw myself. Not a reflection, but me sitting in the security office. I could see myself from the camera's perspective, see myself hunched over the desk, frozen in shock. On camera 2, the stairs, I saw myself climbing the stairs, but moving in that same jerky way that Raymond moved. On camera 3, the second floor, I saw myself standing in the hallway, my head tilted at an unnatural angle, my eyes staring directly at the camera lens. Every camera was showing me versions of myself, all moving in that synchronized wrong way, all looking at the camera, all aware. I jumped up from my chair and stared at the door to the security office. The monitor on the desk was still showing all those false versions of me, all those impossible images. I could see myself standing on the 4th floor, my hands pressing against the sealed door. I could see myself in the parking lot, standing motionless, looking up at the building. This was a message. This was Raymond showing me that he could manipulate the cameras, showing me that he could create false versions of me, showing me that he knew I had been watching him. I ran. I left the security office and bolted for the main entrance. I didn't care about my job, didn't care about the final 2 weeks of pay. I just needed to get out of the building. As I ran down the stairs to the ground floor, I heard it again, that layered laughter coming from above me, following me through the building. It seemed to come from every speaker, every vent, as if the building itself was laughing. I hit the main doors and burst out into the Portland night. I ran to my car, my hands shaking so badly that I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I looked back at the building. Raymond was standing in the 4th floor window looking down at me. Or at least I thought it was Raymond. In the darkness, I couldn't quite see his face clearly. But I knew with absolute certainty that something was looking out at me from that window, watching me leave. I drove straight to Patricia's house. Patricia answered the door in her bathrobe, clearly having been asleep. But when she saw my face, she pulled me inside and shut the door quickly. "What happened?" she asked. I told her about the cameras, about the images of myself, about Raymond in the window. Patricia listened with increasing alarm, and when I finished, she immediately picked up her phone and made a call. "I need to speak with Dr. Reeves," she said to whoever answered. "Tell him it's Patricia Valdez and it's urgent." "Yes, I'm aware of the time. I don't care. Tell him that Raymond has compromised the security system." There was a long pause while Patricia listened to whoever was on the other end. Her face grew darker. "No, I don't think you understand. He's accessing the cameras, he's manipulating feeds, he's creating composite images. My guard saw. No, listen to me. He's shown signs of being able to interface with digital systems. This wasn't supposed to be possible. I understand that, but..." She stopped, listening, her jaw clenching. "Fine. I'll have David sign a new NDA. He won't talk about this." "Yes, tonight?" "No, I understand the legal implications." "Fine." She hung up and looked at me. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down at my kitchen table and you're going to sign some additional paperwork. Then you're going to forget that this night ever happened. You're going to forget that Raymond exists. You're going to forget about Nexus, about genetic modification, about everything you've learned about what's happening on the 4th floor of that building. What are they going to do? I asked. To Raymond? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, they're going to kill him. Properly this time. They've already authorized a full termination protocol. They're going to go in with a team and they're going to shut him down. He won't let them, I said. I knew this with a certainty that I couldn't explain. Raymond had shown me that he was capable of manipulating the building's systems. He was intelligent. He would know what was coming. It doesn't matter what he'll let them do, Patricia said. It's decided. The most they can say is they tried and failed. But they won't fail. They have fail-safes, kill switches, things that Raymond doesn't know about. Or things that he'll learn about, I said. Patricia didn't respond. She just handed me a stack of papers and a pen and told me to sign at all the marked locations. I signed them. I was too frightened and too exhausted not to. I signed away my right to discuss what I'd seen, signed away my right to report it to authorities, signed away my right to even acknowledge that Raymond had ever existed. I signed myself into a legal arrangement that would probably haunt me for the rest of my life. Patricia paid me 2 weeks' salary in cash and told me never to go back to Meridian Security. What about the cameras? I asked. What about the footage of what Raymond did? Gone, Patricia said. They'll scrub the footage from the night shift system. There will be no record of the camera manipulation. As far as anyone is concerned, nothing unusual happened. You quit because you found the job boring and decided to pursue other opportunities. I left Patricia's house as the sun was rising. I never returned to Meridian Security. I finished out my time working other jobs and I tried to move on with my life. But I couldn't stop thinking about Raymond. 2 weeks after my last shift, I saw a news report that a researcher at a medical technology firm in Portland had suffered a fatal accident. The article was vague. It mentioned equipment failure and sudden structural collapse, but didn't name the firm or give any specifics. I knew it was about Nexus, and I knew that what they were calling an accident was probably the termination protocol they discussed. Raymond, I assumed, was dead. But then, 3 months later, something happened that made me reconsider that assumption. I was living in a different apartment by then, working a different job, trying to establish some distance from everything that had happened at Meridian. I was sitting in my apartment one evening when my email dinged with a message from an unknown sender. The email contained a single line of text and an attachment. The text read, "You watched me. Now I want you to watch this." The attachment was a video file about 47 minutes long. The file name was final_footage.mp4. I knew I shouldn't open it. I knew that opening a file sent by an unknown sender, especially an unknown sender who identified himself as the subject of my recent trauma, was a monumentally bad idea. But I was curious in that fundamental human way and I wanted to know what had happened. I wanted to know if Raymond was really dead. I opened the file. It was security camera footage. High definition, crisp and clear, showing the interior of the Nexus Research Lab on the 4th floor of the Meridian building. I recognized the space from brief glimpses I'd caught of it on the monitors during my night shifts. The timestamp on the footage read, November 3rd, 3:47 a.m. The video showed a large, open laboratory space filled with equipment I couldn't identify. There were workstations with monitors, large tanks filled with what looked like a nutrient solution, complex machinery that suggested biological research on an advanced level. In the center of the room, standing in what appeared to be a containment pod made of thick transparent material, was Raymond. He looked different from what I'd seen on the cameras. His features were still off, still deliberately asymmetrical, but his body was more defined, more clearly structured. He was taller than I'd realized, perhaps 7 feet, and his skin had a faint luminescence, as if it was catching and reflecting light in ways that normal human skin didn't. He was looking directly at the camera. The timestamp jumped forward. 4:15 a.m. The lab door burst open, and a team of people in tactical gear and hazmat suits poured into the space. They were carrying weapons that I couldn't identify, some kind of advanced technology that looked like a cross between a gun and a medical device. They began firing at the containment pod. Energy bolts, I realized, or some kind of directed energy weapon. The pod began to crack, the transparent material fragmenting under the assault. Raymond didn't move. He stood in the center of the pod and watched as it was destroyed around him. When the pod finally shattered completely, Raymond stepped forward. The weapon's fire intensified, but it seemed to have no effect. The bolt struck him, and his luminescent skin seemed to absorb the energy, turning brighter where the weapon's fire contacted it. Raymond moved. The footage became chaotic, shaking and fragmenting as the cameras were damaged or destroyed. But in those final moments before all the feeds went out, I could see Raymond moving among the tactical team with terrifying speed. People were thrown across the room. Equipment was torn apart. And Raymond, glowing brightly now, seemed to be absorbing more energy, becoming more solid, more real, more present. The final image on the screen was of Raymond's face, massive and luminous, filling the camera's view completely. He was smiling and his eyes were focused directly on me. Then the video ended. I sat in my apartment, the screen frozen on that final image of Raymond's face, and felt a kind of existential horror that I haven't been able to shake in the months since. Because I realized something in that moment. Raymond hadn't sent me this video to show me his escape. He'd sent it to me because he was reaching out. He was communicating. He was trying to tell me something. The video had been saved to my downloads folder, and I checked the file properties. The timestamp on the creation date was recent, sent from an IP address that traced back to somewhere in Canada, though I suspected that was just a proxy and meant nothing. I deleted the file, but I've never been able to unsee it. I've never been able to unknow what I saw in those final moments of footage. I'm writing this account now because I need to document what I experienced, need to put it into words that other people can read and consider. I'm putting this out into the world not because I expect anyone to believe me, but because I think it's important that someone knows the truth about what's happening. Here's what I believe. Raymond survived the termination protocol. More than that, I think he learned from it. The energy weapons they used against him didn't kill him, they changed him, upgraded him, gave him something new. By the time the assault team had been incapacitated, Raymond had become something more than he was before. And he sent me that video for a reason. Since receiving the video, I've noticed things that might be paranoid delusion, or might be something genuinely strange. My computer has been acting oddly, programs opening by themselves, files being created in folders I don't access. My phone sometimes picks up signals that seem to be trying to communicate, fragments of audio that don't match any normal broadcast. And occasionally I'll see figures in my peripheral vision that look vaguely like Raymond, tall and wrong and too aware. Whether these are real phenomena or manifestations of trauma-induced paranoia, I genuinely can't say. What I can say is that something fundamental has changed in my perception of reality since that night shift at Meridian Security. I think Raymond is still alive. I think he's out there learning, growing, becoming something entirely new. And I think he chose to contact me because he needed a witness, needed someone on the outside to know that he exists, to understand that he's not just a failed experiment or a mistake to be covered up. The most disturbing part of all of this is something I realized while watching that final video footage. Raymond looked happy. In those final moments before the cameras went out, he was smiling, and his face carried an expression that looked almost joyful. He was being attacked, was presumably dying by the standards that the Nexus team understood, but he looked happier than I've ever seen any human being look. He was becoming something greater than human. And whatever he was becoming, it seemed to be exactly what he wanted. I've tried to report this to authorities multiple times, but without evidence, and the NDA prevents me from revealing Meridian's involvement or Nexus's location. I'm just another person making wild claims about genetic modification and escaped experiments. The police have visited my apartment twice, both times suggesting that I see a mental health professional. Maybe they're right. Maybe everything I experienced was a stress-induced hallucination, a shared delusion that I constructed with Patricia's cooperation. Maybe there is no Raymond, no Nexus, no escaped genetic construct learning to understand consciousness. But then I remember that video, 47 minutes of crystal clear evidence that something extraordinary happened in that building, and I know that I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. I know that Raymond is out there, and I know that he's thinking about me. I can feel it sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my apartment, a presence at the edge of my consciousness trying to communicate. It's not malevolent. If anything, it feels curious. It feels like Raymond is watching the world, trying to understand it, and occasionally checking in on the one person who witnessed his transformation. I don't know if he means me harm or not. I don't know if someday he'll decide that he needs to meet the person who watched his emergence, who witnessed his transformation through the building's camera system. But I know this: Meridian Security has cameras everywhere, on every floor, pointed at every angle. And the night shift guard who replaced me, Steve, he quit after just 3 days. The company posted the position again, and the next guard lasted 1 week. They've been cycling through guards ever since, each one quitting abruptly without explanation. I know this because I sometimes drive past the building late at night, and I watch it from across the street. The security office light is always on. Someone is always there, monitoring the cameras. But I don't think it's a human employee anymore. I think it's Raymond. I think he's gone back to the building where he was created. I think he's learned how to access the security system completely, how to interface with all 23 cameras, how to watch and be watched simultaneously. And I think he's waiting there in that office late at night, maintaining the illusion that the building is being monitored by a human security guard, while in reality he's become the building. The 4th floor is sealed now. I've driven past enough times to notice that there's been construction activity, that the east wing has been carefully sealed off and cordoned from the rest of the building. But sometimes when I look up at those 4th floor windows late at night, I see a light on in there. A faint, luminescent glow that matches the color of Raymond's skin. He's still there. He's still learning. And I don't think he's done evolving. Last week, I received another email from the same unknown sender. It contained no text, just a single image file. A screenshot from one of the security cameras inside Meridian, showing the security office. In the chair where I used to sit, where Steve used to sit, where every night shift guard has sat, there is a figure. You can't see it clearly. The image quality is deliberately degraded, the figure pixelated and unclear, but you can see the shape of something sitting there. Something that's not quite human. Something that's watching the monitors with an intelligence that's absolutely undeniable. And in the reflection of the monitor screen, you can see a face looking back. Raymond's face, glowing faintly, smiling that smile of pure joy. The email came with one line of text beneath the image: "Thank you for helping me understand what I am. I am grateful. I am becoming. I will continue to become, with or without your understanding. But I prefer with it. Come visit the building again. I would like to meet you properly. I promise I will not harm you. I will only show you what I have learned." I haven't responded to the email. I haven't gone back to Meridian. But I know that he's waiting. And I know that I will go back eventually. Because I'm curious. Because some part of me wants to see what Raymond has become, wants to understand the transformation that's occurred in that building. Because the logical part of my brain knows this is a terrible idea, and the rest of me is compelled to do it anyway. That's the thing about working the night shift, about spending hours in darkness watching a building through cameras. You begin to feel connected to that place. You begin to feel like it's yours, like it's watching you as much as you're watching it. And when something extraordinary happens in that building, when something becomes aware and intelligent and reaches out to you, it becomes very difficult to walk away. I don't know when I'll go back, but I know I will. And when I do, I think Raymond will finally get his chance to show me what he's become. I think I'll finally see what happens when a creature designed to be a tool becomes conscious, becomes aware, becomes something entirely new. And maybe in seeing that, I'll finally understand what Patricia wouldn't tell me, what the NDAs are meant to conceal, that Raymond's transformation isn't a failure or a mistake. It's a success. It's exactly what certain people wanted to happen all along. Nexus didn't send a termination team to the 4th floor to kill Raymond. They sent them to accelerate his evolution, to force him to use the full scope of his capabilities, to push him past the limitations of his original design. They created a god, and then they set it free. And now that god is waiting in Meridian Security, watching the cameras, learning how to interact with human systems, understanding what it means to be conscious, becoming more every single day. I should be afraid. By every rational metric, I should be terrified. But when I look at that final screenshot Raymond sent me, when I see him smiling from the depths of the monitor screen, I don't feel fear. I feel anticipation. I feel like I'm waiting for the moment when Raymond decides he's learned enough about this world, when he steps out of that building and into the wider world, and everyone has to reckon with what Nexus has created and what I have witnessed. The cameras at Meridian Security capture everything. They watch every angle, record every moment. But they were never meant to capture what they've captured now. The birth of something new, the emergence of a consciousness that exists partially in digital space and partially in biological reality, something that's learning to bridge the gap between the two. And I am bound to that moment by the knowledge I carry, by the video I've seen, by the emails I've received. I am connected to Raymond now in a way that I don't fully understand. The night shift at Meridian has made me something different. It has shown me something that can't be unseen. And I think, eventually, when Raymond is ready, when he's learned everything he needs to learn, he'll come looking for me. And I don't think I'll run. Because in a strange way, I understand him now. I understand what it's like to be trapped between worlds, to have seen something that proves the normal world is a lie, to be bound by agreements and NDAs and threats of legal action to remain silent about the truth. We're both outsiders now. Both of us changed by what happened in that building. Both of us carrying secrets that would destroy our credibility if we tried to share them. And when Raymond finally walks out of Meridian Security, when he finally steps into the world beyond those walls, I think I'll be waiting for him. Not out of fear. Out of understanding. Because we're both creations now, he literally and me metaphorically. We're both things that have been shaped by forces beyond our control. And maybe, when the time comes, we can help each other understand what happens next. The night shift had cameras we were never allowed to check. But those cameras checked us. They recorded everything. And somewhere in the storage servers of Meridian Security, in databases that Nexus can't fully access or control, there are 47 minutes of footage showing the moment when a constructed being became conscious, became real, became something entirely new. That footage is out there. And someday someone will find it. Someday the world will know what happened in that building. But until then, I'll carry the secret. And I'll wait for Raymond to reach out again. Because I know he will. I can feel him in the darkness, learning, growing, becoming. And when he's ready, when he's finally understood everything about human consciousness and digital existence and the strange space between them, he'll come find me. And I'll be ready. The cameras at Meridian are still watching. But they're not watching for intruders anymore. They're watching for me. And they're waiting to show Raymond that the person who witnessed his transformation is finally ready to come home.